Hello and welcome all to the latest episode at NMIMS Indore. Today we have the honor of hosting two very esteemed and special guests on our podcast. I'd like to welcome Mr. Dipinder Sekhon, the founder of Kritikal Solutions, and Dr. Anshuman Jaswal, the director of SVKM's NMIMS Indore. Mr. Dipinder Sekhon is from a technological background. He mentors and even invests in inspiring entrepreneurs, especially student faculty-led or early-stage startups. Dr. Anshuman Jaswal sir is a business and economics enthusiast. Sir has pursued a total of 5 degrees that includes BSc Economics from the University of London, MBA in Finance from SVKM's NMIMS, Bachelor's of Law from the University of London, Master's of Law from the University of Pittsburgh, and PhD in Business and Managerial Economics from IIM Ahmedabad. You truly are an inspiration to us, sir. Our guests today are the connoisseurs in the field of economy and entrepreneurship. Let's have a chat with them and get to know their intellectual views and opinions on the topic student entrepreneurship guided by faculties and universities. So let's open the discussion on the topic student and faculty-led entrepreneurship.
So I'll get started. Yes. So basically today, we are at a point in time when it's no longer sufficient for us to hope to do an MBA at some point in time and work for an MNC, right? That much is clear. Additionally, we have this wonderful revolution going around all of us, which is digital, which involves artificial intelligence, which involves blockchain, which involves so many new technologies, including robotics. It involves drones. So the idea is that the tools available to us are also far better than what they were 2 decades ago. So just to briefly, give you my example, I did my MBA from NMIMS in 2001. I had a friend of mine, a batchmate, who wanted to have his own startup in the area of coaching, so for CAT, GRE, GMAT and so on. So he started that, and after a couple of months he asked me to join, and I did that. So we were lucky to actually break even in a few months. At some point in time I decided that it wasn't challenging enough for me, so I moved on. The startup is still running. But what is important is that we did not have any support from anybody, right? We didn't even know who to ask for support. So my friend had his support system in the city. This was Chandigarh. So that actually helped us. A few friends here and there, some people, maybe some cousins or somebody I knew helped us. But there was no organized structure to take advantage of. 2 decades on, and this generation, all of you today, you do not have that handicap that we had. It's not that the company didn't survive without it. It did. It's still doing well, and they've expanded much further, right? But the idea is, if we had more support, maybe we could have expanded elsewhere quickly. We could have done so many different things, because when you have support, there's so many things that you don't know that you come to know. People tell you about how to run a business. People tell you about how to expand your idea, where to raise funding from, which is so important for growth of businesses. So I would say the people who are maybe coming out of education institutions today, who have 5 years work ex, they have so much more potential as a result of this entire ecosystem which has come up. Something as simple as Shark Tank, I would say that it has had a cultural effect on our entire country. Of course, Shark Tank US is global, but if we talk about Shark Tank India, it's had a cultural effect. I have been to so many places. It could be, at a street corner, and you'll find somebody watching Shark Tank so eagerly that they forget the world around them, right? It could be very noisy. It could be chaotic. They are totally engrossed. And what happens after that? After that, people discuss what happened in the last episode, right? So I do not remember in, the 15 years after my MBA, something like that happening. Okay. So today, 10-year-olds are aware of how to make a pitch because they saw Shark Tank with the parents or with the cousins. So the entire ecosystem, the culture has changed completely. If you look at that backdrop, then comes to the role of people like me in education. And Dipinder, he's come from a very important education institution in a country, in IIT Delhi. So they have an ecosystem in place. They've had it for several years now, right? So with that kind of background, he and his friends have set up at least 2 or 3 companies, which have taken advantage of the fact that professors in institutions like IIT Delhi, IIM Ahmedabad, IIT Bombay, they are interested in encouraging business as well. So it's no longer about research anymore in education institutions. He'll expand on this much later because we had this discussion earlier. So the idea is application of research today. It's no longer sufficient to get a patent. What do you do with that patent? That is what is important today. The government is aware of it, but frankly speaking, it's the next generation, it's your generation, in terms of my understanding, that will really produce the results. Okay, we will help produce the ecosystem, but the actual results will come 5, 10, 20 years from now, where research will not happen for the sake of it. An idea would not be an abstract idea. People will also think, how do we use this idea? Not just to make money, but to improve lives of other people around us, right? You've already seen so many things, so many business ideas related to sustainability. I've seen 15-year-old kids coming up with brilliant ideas, right? So there are already so many examples, but with this ecosystem, it will come up further. And that is really, for example, if you'll talk about NMIMS Indore, that is our goal, because as you know, we have this business idea competition coming up now. We have a Chancellor's Challenge coming up at the university level. We are putting our students in touch with Atal Incubation Center in NMIMS Mumbai and others, of course, if required. We're talking about Smart India Hackathon organized by a central government ministry itself, right, at the national level. So all of these things are there. So our role is to plug in our students into all of these activities, but of course to provide them with the infrastructure, the ecosystem, but also the support. Sometimes it's just, a little encouragement from faculty. Our students don't need, us to push them every day. In 90% of the cases, they are self-motivated, they are self-driven. But there are always doubts that come up in the life of every entrepreneur. Even in your career, but especially in entrepreneurship. There'll be doubts. Am I, wasting my life running this business? Am I playing with people's lives? Because we had this a gentleman who's an entrepreneur and an academic over in our institution. He came and he made a very good point that he was running a business with his friend and everything was hunky-dory. Then COVID hits. In COVID, he realizes how much the employees depend on him. Their livelihoods, their families, people's marriages, hospital bills, everything depend on the salary he's giving. And that is when, as a person who's 50 years old realizes, oh my goodness, it wasn't something to be taken lightly, right? So in those moments, if we get the right support from our ecosystem, including faculty and people like Dipinder, it's in those moments that, with that support, we'll be able to go over, those valleys of doubt and then get to the other side. And after that, again, the person takes care, take care of himself or herself, right? It's not continuous support. Even financially, it's not continuous support. But it has to be the right support at the right time. Personally speaking, I'll only be able to give that support over time when I've seen 10 or 15 startups in my campus coming through. I've, seen the cycles of development of those. And then I'll be an expert. I'll be able to say, this is a problem, this is a solution. But as a faculty grouping out here, for example, all of us have to go through that cycle of maybe a few years, 5 to 10 years, to be experts at the end of it so that we can give that support. So I'll stop here because I'd like him to come in and gives you views as well. But the idea is that we are at a wonderful juncture in our history as a nation, in our a role as an emerging market contributing to the entire world, and as individuals we are at this point in time when we can really make a difference to society on a day-to-day basis through any of these innovations. You can talk about so many of them out here, elsewhere, but frankly speaking, it is using the power of entrepreneurship to solve society's problems. And as all of us know, as Indians, country of 1.4 billion, we have enough problems to solve, right? So there'll never be a dearth of requirement for entrepreneurs. And therefore, our role will be ongoing if we are able to provide the right support. Please.
Wonderful. No, I fully concur, and thank you for your comments. I should also, to the student community and the faculty community, the 2 decades of difference that Director Sir alluded to, you're all very fortunate to have a much better ecosystem, and with someone like him committed to this cause of entrepreneurship, it can only go forward. And you should really take full advantage of that, and that will also energize the whole thing. As we mentioned, 10-15 startups, and then more things will happen. It'll spiral up. This progression in our country as well, I have grown up in different cities in MP, Jabalpur, etc. And my father was in government service, and we clearly had this 2 kind of communities: those who would be, let's say, business families and business, and then those who would be in service. And it was almost like a very negative sort of approach. We are a socialist sort of, we're coming at least from that side, right? We are not a capitalist stick society or a market-oriented society. You had events like 1991, liberalization, etc. But so coming from there towards where we are, I say, Infosys for techies was like one example where, people like us, common, let's say, middle class engineers, could set up successful businesses, right, of a certain type. That really was when we were starting in 2002, etc. And then Flipkart, I would say these 2. But what we still don't have, and which is what the government and everyone talks about these days, is deep tech ventures. Like, when would we have something like a Google or an Apple, a product or deep tech sort of venture? Because what Flipkart has done is a lot of e-commerce. Everyone wants to do e-commerce. And Infosys is, let's say, lots of services companies, which are great, wonderful. One of the largest companies by market cap today is TCS in India. So it's very valuable, right? But I think we need to get to the next stage as a nation in terms of deep tech entrepreneurship, right? And product companies like that. Because a lot of, for example, what we are creating value for is for abroad, right? The market being US, etc. We need to look at, as Professor Anshuman also mentioned, problems in India. There are enough problems in India. And it is happening now. If you look at the unicorns, they are local issues, local market. It's a large market that they are serving. Now, particularly about student, and I would say student faculty entrepreneurship, because I was fortunate in IIT Delhi, we had an incubator, and not just that, incubator for companies, right? So there was support available. And not just that, some of our professors were co-founders. And none of us, by the way, had any business experience. So we still ended up making all the mistakes, but he's absolutely right. Without that support, first of all, I am very clear, I wouldn't have taken up entrepreneurship. I would have gone most probably for higher studies or something, and some other co-founders would have taken up jobs. So it's a very direct sort of result. And I should add, Professor Anshuman, that the fact that professors were willing to be partners and co-founders and not just mentors was a very strong statement. Because, as any team and any business is a team, the experience, just the general experience, I'm not even talking about the technical domains or the MBA or professional domains, that of course would add value to the business, but just that experience is helpful. You go through so many things and that helps. So from your comments, I think NMIMS Indore is probably ripe for such teams and such entrepreneurial encouragement. And I do really hope whatever I can do and collaborate in my new current venture, KITES, which stands for Knowledge, Innovation and Technology Ecosystem. And ecosystem is the same ecosystem that you spoke about. That's a mandate to invest in, to be like an incubator, especially for early stage student faculty led, academia linked, research linked ventures. So I'll be very happy. That's almost like a mandate. And the other very impressive thing here, I think, which is very important, is the mix of business and tech, right? It is embedded in your programs, which is very unique, like MBA Tech, and plus the presence of all of these different schools across. So the right and the most balanced, the most successful ventures would probably come out when you have someone from the business side, someone from the tech side, two or more people being the co-founders, right? And then they apply their passions and knowledge into that. So our nation is transforming. This is the need of the hour, and students should become job givers and in the process solve important problems for the society. And hopefully we will also see some ventures which utilize the R&D and the knowledge that you are learning about, you apply at least some aspect of that depth and collaborate.
So yes, we can say that if faculties are helping the students in their startups, then definitely the students get many valuable inputs from their experience, from the faculty's experience. But if we take your example, sir, you had the first experience of your startup was after you completed your MBA. So do you think that a student should first complete their conventional educational loop and then move on to startups, or should they start even when they're inside the education system?
Look, if you look at global experience, let's forget our Indian education system, our culture, everything, right? You've already mentioned I have similar views. People have left after 10th or left during 10th. Dhirubhai Ambani, right? He's a 10th, yeah, 10th year, he passed, I think, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Then he goes to Aden and he sees petroleum companies and he decides this is the thing to do, right? Why do we need 12th to set up a business? Why do we need a first degree? Why do we need a second degree or a third degree? We do not need that kind of an education. This is about getting the right idea at the right time. If the time for your idea is now, don't wait forever for it to be brought to life, right? That is how I see it. Because that is your opportunity, that is a business. And that is what makes you a visionary. 5 years down the line, if you didn't do it, you finished your MBA, somebody else took the idea, they made something out of it, your chance is gone, right? Furthermore, I think it would be a disservice to society, to Indian society, if we let go of those wonderful ideas for other people to do. So if UK, US, Israel, there's so many European countries, Australia, Singapore, China, South Korea, these are the kind of countries which are the most innovative in the world, your Finland or Scandinavian countries. If that idea comes up there, to me it is almost criminal. Not on part of the individual, just that person, on part of the society, which does not provide the means for that 15-year-old, 16-year-old to bring that idea to fruition. So, we have this wonderful culture, all of that is fine. Your IITs, your IIMs, all of that is fine. But frankly speaking, we should step out of that. We should see how the world actually works and then, try to walk along those lines. So many inventors, they did not finish school. Forget college. Right? So you have this idea of, Elon Musk, basically, there's a pretty decent chance he would have been what he was without any college education. Founders of Microsoft or so many other places, right? Bill Gates and this and that. Mark Zuckerberg. So these are not people who finished their college degrees. If you compare me with Mark Zuckerberg, I'm 5-0 up on him, right? But, Facebook is Facebook, right? So therefore, I would say if you have the right idea, try to get support, because again, without support, it doesn't really, become successful. If you get the right support from family, from friends, from, incubator centers, innovation centers, entrepreneurship support, if you get all of that, please go ahead. From, banks and other financial providers. Once that support is there, then it doesn't matter what your age is, right? Somebody who's good at one thing and makes it an idea worth billions or trillions of dollars is as good as anybody else when it comes to education. I mean, he doesn't have that education, right? But he has so much more. He's created so much value. He's provided so much employment. So then it doesn't really matter, right? We all know Sachin Tendulkar, right? I mean, he's practically the god of cricket. Everything is measured against him. How much did he study? His parents were both professors. His brother is very well educated. But they knew that for him to become what he needs to be, at 10th, he had to take a call in his life. Right? So I would say, if you're very young, look at the people in that field who've come up. Try to gauge what is the right age, right level of education from their experience, and then take a call. But if you decide to finish your education 2 years before and take a leap, go ahead and do that. Because there is no right time, right level of education. There is a right idea and a right time for that idea. If you have a good idea, go for it. Forget the education system, even despite of all these degrees you talk about, I can vouch for that. That is what it's really about from my side. Yeah.
Well, again, 100% agreed, and I compliment you, sir, because I said this is a tricky one from your position, but this is the right thing. And again, you're fortunate to have him at the helm of affairs here, which means you'll automatically get support. What I would say is, if you look at the purpose of education, you could say that you are learning to contribute to society. Now, you can do it in various different ways. You can also look at it as a means to get a source of income for yourself, right? And these are ways to look at it. If you have an idea and if you're able to set up a business at any point in time, and if you think whatever training you needed for that, whatever knowledge you needed for that, you have it, then you've had your education is complete for what you want to do. Right? You're ready, and that's also means that's a great way to contribute to society, we discussed. What I would also say is, in a way, your education never stops for various fields, even when you're working, right? And it's not always formal degrees, and sometimes you have executive education, formal certifications, etc. So that is all important. And as an entrepreneur also, you constantly need to learn. In fact, all aspects of MBA, you need to know HR, you need to know finance, you need to know everything, which any one person can't know. So to that extent, and your learning automatically would be on steroids if you're doing a startup, whether it is formally recognized or not. Like Dhirubhai Ambani, much earlier, can be given several PhDs. Obviously, it will be equivalent of that. So that's how I think if we look at it in a more broader way, what the purpose of education is and what do you really call knowledge, then you should absolutely get on with it. I would say, there's a financial risk aspect here. Startup and business in general is a risky thing. And uh, one one must not sort of just jump into it. One must jump into it with an assessment of that risk. For example, if you have to support your family, which may have invested their hard-earned, strained sums for your education. Of course, you can make a lot of money in business as well, but then you're sort of putting it in a risky stuff, right? So you should assess how much risk you can afford and when. And that is where support comes in, right? If investment and funding and capital is available, then you could put your energy and youth, which is very important, and your knowledge, and somebody else could put their capital, for example, and then it becomes a de-risked thing for us, for you. But these things need to be considered, and ideally, everyone, as many entrepreneurs, the better it is, and as early and quickly as possible. However, each one must decide based on, do they feel ready, and are their risks sort of covered based on whatever stage of life they are.
So the key takeaways can be that if a student is visionary, if he has that vision that can lead him to success, then there's no age barrier that he should look out for.
Absolutely. If I can just add one more thing,
Sure.
just to carry on from where he left. The point about risk is very valid, right? Each entrepreneur is taking so much risk. They could have done, something different, and they could have, earned hundreds of thousands of dollars becoming an investment banker in the UK or in the US or wherever, in Mumbai also today. So we are lucky again that we are at a stage where even the national education policy, the 2020, NAP 2020, recognizes this fact and says, if after 12th you leave, you're eligible to go back to the same degrees. There's no difference. If you leave after the first year of a degree under the academic bank of credits, right, for which, by the way, all our students have to register, it's mandatory, just to let you know. If you leave after the first year in a 3-year degree, for example, you get a certificate. After the second year, if you leave, you get a diploma. After the third year, obviously, if it's a 3-year degree, you get the degree, right? Or a 4th year, after the 4th year, you get the degree. The point is, you can actually leave after the first year of the degree. Come back after 2 years of trying your idea. You can leave after the second year. In my generation, we couldn't have imagined that. Look, this is the government policy, right? Think about the time today. It's a government policy which says you can do that. They are telling each and every university to do this. And it's mandatory for us to do this, for us to comply. Students also have to register. The idea is the moment you have that mindset that a person can go and come back to finish their education, that student is freed from so many compulsions. What will happen first? 15 and 16-year-old, 18-year-old will talk to the parents. Parents will say, finish this degree. That is the standard response. Right? My kids come to me, I'll also give the same response. Finish the degree. But then they can tell me, I can finish the first year and come back for the second after 2 years. That is also okay. Right? And that is like a light coming on in the mind of the parent, because the parent would have never imagined that. And it's the government of India which just said, you can do this now.
It's like a fail-safe for that.
Absolutely. So the risk part, at least some of it in terms of wasting your life, that is taken care of. And the moment you take that into the degree, you want to come back for an MBA and you find out, as an interviewer, I find out somebody had the guts at the age of 18 to go out, try a business idea, come back for the education after 2 years. I have so much more respect for that person. And for me, that is the person who should be encouraged, even for an MBA, because I know they have the most potential. That is the person who will generate employment. So many others would just be taking up a job in somebody else's company or a university or a government job, right? So that is the change, which is why there is, to some extent at least, some of the risk is mitigated or lowered. Because again, this is something that Indians as a society now are recognizing and understand. And just to again take something from what you said, in our families, and this is a discussion I had with my first cousin as well, who's thinking of early retirement now. He's been an entrepreneur several times. But what he said and what I agreed to was we didn't have the support in our families and in our, support system or our friends as well. All of us were kids of people with either government jobs or steady jobs, people who, parents didn't leave the jobs for the entire life. My father worked with just one organization his entire life. So for me to think of becoming an entrepreneur was too difficult, right? But that is changing now. So the risk reduces because the entire society steps forward to take at least some of that risk. So it's shared. Okay, so that is a big change for us, right? Please go on.
Just one more thing to add from this. I absolutely agree. First of all, the value of a failed startup or failed entrepreneurial experience. Let's say somebody has spent 1 year doing a startup and 1 year, let's say, studying an MBA or business. I'll put much higher weight to that 1 year failed startup experience because I know the learning would be greater over there. And this, I think, is not just limited to us. The whole society is. If let's say I'm recruiting for my company, I would absolutely give much greater weight to an entrepreneurial experience, even if it has failed. Perhaps even more so because you would have learned some very important lessons in that process. One. Secondly, in terms of typically when you are a student, since we are talking about that, your expenses and your needs in life are limited, right? Like, for example, we were just living in a hostel, kind of. When you grow up in life, generally you get married, you have greater responsibilities. If you sort of start earning more, somehow your expenses also increase, right? So the risk to that extent is more difficult to take the entrepreneurial plunge at that point. It is much easier because anyway, it can be different for different people. Like, as I mentioned, for some of for some of the students, there might be a lot that the family is expecting and you immediately sort of need to financially support the families. So that's a different case. But in general, compared to your stage of life, it is easier to do it right up front. And it is sort of more difficult. The opportunity cost kind of becomes much higher. So to that extent, nobody else is kind of depending on you mostly. So you could sort of take greater risk.
I agree with this point because if I am able to say that I'm running a social startup, I founded a social startup, and it's only because the impact that I'm creating is far more greater for me than the revenue that I'm generating at my point of life. So that's really nice. And also, even if the formal education stops, the learning never stops. It should never stop, right? So are there any notable success stories of student entrepreneurs that you would like to share?
So there are several, right? But actually, even a person in my position has to keep learning. So this gentleman, this friend of mine who'd come over to our campus and he addressed our students. Interestingly, he didn't talk about the students who succeeded. He spoke about the students who did not. He spoke about two students, in one case, somebody who failed 3 times, another person who failed 4 times, right? The wonderful thing was that the students did not give up. Along with the studies, they had their startups. So they were doing both things at the same time. And they kept going despite not achieving success in the first, second, or third attempt. Right? So if I had to highlight something, it would be that. Because there are cases, of course, because I've been, in several institutions. In most of those institutions, there is some kind of incubation center, entrepreneurship and development center that is there. There is some support being given to students. So there are successful ideas. There are ideas in which people have taken up ideas in the, businesses in the area of sustainability, for example, right? People are looking at green energy. There are so many problems, including, for example, sanitation-related, recycling-related problems that we have in India, pollution-related, for example, right? People have come up with good ideas for that. And it's really your generation, to be honest, which has come to terms with all of these problems. Because, 20 years ago, if I go back, for us, pollution was part and parcel of life. Right? Every city would have its nala or drain passing through it. People won't even think twice about going next to it. Today, people want to solve their problem, purify their water, treat it in one way or the other. That is a relatively new idea in India. Air pollution is still there in so many Indian cities. Swachh Vayu or clean air, the rankings, abhiyans, the different efforts, programs, those are relatively new in our country. Similarly, cleaning the rivers, relatively new idea in our country, right? When I did my schooling and my first degree in the UK, the first thing we were told when we got to the UK is, this tap water that you're about to drink, it's been recycled 7 times. That was the first thing that we were told by somebody. That means it's gone into the drain 7 times. You can imagine the extent of pollution it's gone through. It's been purified 7 times, and I'm drinking it right now, and you just drank it or you're about to drink it. And we did that every day. I was there for 6 years, I drank it every day. Water that was recycled 7 times. Can we imagine that out here? Right? You know the state of our rivers, for example, right? So there are enough ideas. So I would say, for me, the best ideas are the ones that solve so many problems that we have in our society. The best entrepreneurs are the ones who do not give up. Because it is so easy to give up and walk away. Right? As I said, even today, there are so many struggles, right? It is not easy to raise money. For example, it is not easy to break even or succeed, to make money, right? So when Zomato, by its standards or by anybody else's, by standards of large companies, makes a profit, what is a small profit, relatively small profit, everybody knows about it in the newspaper the next day. Why? Because all of us are following it so closely. Okay, so it's the small successes that have to be celebrated at the individual level, at the family level, at the support system level, and then at the societal level. And that is what I would like to emphasize, is the startups which get that support, which do well. Okay, there is no dearth of ideas even in our generation. It's not that we didn't have ideas. It's just that idea coming to fruition, which was a problem. And today I feel, with the enthusiasm, the energy, the drive that this generation has, so many instances are there where people have actually overcome all those handicaps and they have achieved some degree of success. You don't have to be a unicorn, to be honest, to be considered successful. You can do so many things your entire life, not become a unicorn, but be a very valuable entrepreneur or contributor to society.
Right. I'll give 2 examples, but before that, I'll make some points. See, as we discussed, 30 years ago, probably we were not even looking for examples of successful businessmen from professional sort of setups. Then we had somebody has to do it first, right? And of course, Infosys was not the first of its kind, but if there are enough of those things happening, then somebody will become big, and then that will inspire a huge generation, right? And then we spoke about Flipkart. Currently, there are very few examples of successful student entrepreneurs in India. But I have no doubt with all of what is happening, it is changing. And these examples are going to increase. And once you have like one successful big one, and it'll not be like the first one won't get there. If you have thousands, then it'll be histogram, right? It'll be a distribution of all across, but that will. So we need not kind of say that, okay, it's not happening. Somebody has to do it for the first time, and then the whole thing will change. But still, let's look at 2 examples which come to my mind. Bharat Pay, not Ashnish, but there was another guy, IIT Delhi student, who was still a student, and one of our profs was telling me, even in one of the student assignments or this entrepreneurial idea competition types, he had the same idea, and but by the time he was graduating, it was already a unicorn or something. So that's one. I forget his name, but you could look at one of the Bharat Pay founders. Second is, I'll take a faculty example, not student one. This is from Israel, Professor Amnon Shashwa. He is a professor. He's a computer vision prof in Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And I have interned as a student in the year 2001 there. At that time, it was a little startup called Mobileye, Mobileye. That's a self-driving car company. It was acquired by Intel for $15 billion a few years ago, right? At that time, when we were interning, it was running in a house, completely faculty, student-led sort of startup, and then it was getting there. And Professor Shashwa was the founder, chairman, and fully at the helm of affairs till even right now. I think within Intel, that group is sort of led by him. I don't know who were the students sort of involved there, but it was still, of the type of startup that we are talking about. I'm sure there are many others, less perhaps in India, more abroad. There's so many times we hear dropped out, right? Steve Jobs and dropped out of education. So they were all students who dropped out, didn't even sort of complete. And of course, there are other examples he took about Dhirubhai Ambani, and I think Nirma's founder also, if I'm right. And they've then set up institutes, right, which is great. So there are several examples. And in terms of India, I have no doubt, if after 3 years, 5 years, if with every passing year, you'll find more examples, and some for which we'll not need to think, right? They'll just be there. It's a matter of time.
So this is the end for the first part of the podcast. Stay tuned for the next part, where we're going to explore more aspects about the journey of a student entrepreneur. Thank you.